Nobody expects a movie to be 100% historically accurate, but there are some World War II films that make historians' heads explode. If you want to know what actually happened at Pearl Harbor, you probably shouldn't watch Pearl Harbor. First off, it's a love story.
Loving you kept me alive.
But it's also a Michael Bay flick. The film follows the exploits of 2 US pilots in a love triangle with a nurse, who all end up on Oahu on that fateful day. But the filmmakers routinely mix up uniforms, military branches, practically everything you can think of. For instance, Ben Affleck's Army Air Force character is treated in a Navy hospital. Then there's a Japanese-American character who gets a call from someone in Japan, even though transoceanic calls between civilians weren't a thing at the time. Then there's Admiral Yamamoto's line about awakening a sleeping giant. Sure, it sounds cool, but it was almost certainly the invention of the scriptwriter behind 1970's Tora Tora Tora. Look closely and you'll even see the USS Arizona Memorial in one shot. That's right, in a movie about the bombing of Pearl Harbor, you can see the memorial to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Talk about a wrinkle in time. And that's still not all. In scenes showing the launching of Japanese planes, they used technology that was invented in the 1950s, and the planes are even the wrong color.
I'm with Daily Newsreel, and I can tell you one thing. Them ain't Navy planes.
US forces, meanwhile, are flying a fighter plane that didn't come out until after Pearl Harbor. Okay, ready for us to ruin one of the best war scenes of all time? Historian James Holland told Penguin Books UK that the visuals of the famous landing scene in Saving Private Ryan are all wrong. First, the beach in the film is too small. Then there's the fact that the anti-landing craft obstacles meant to slow down the invasion are installed backwards, with spikes incorrectly pointing toward the sea.
They're pointed this way, your landing craft comes in, and as it kind of swells back, it then falls onto spike rather than that way around.
Also, machine guns couldn't fire such long, continuous bursts. I mean, technically, yes, they could, but the barrels would become so overheated after just a few hundred rounds that the gun would dramatically lose accuracy. Gunners were instructed to shoot in short bursts to maintain the accuracy and structural integrity of their weapon. In Darkest Hour, Prime Minister Winston Churchill navigates intergovernmental bickering, the Dunkirk evacuation, and a possible Nazi invasion of Britain. It's a heavy responsibility, so in one key scene, the PM decides to take a ride on London's tube and ask the passengers for their thoughts.
So how are you all bearing up?
Should he attempt to make peace with Germany or keep up the good fight? The response is unanimous: end Hitler once and for all.
Fight.
Fight the fascists.
Fight them with anything we can lay our hands on.
They'll never take Piccadilly.
Emboldened, Churchill stays the anti-appeasement course. But are we really to believe that the Prime Minister jumped in the tube to ask random people for military advice? Okay, there's one account of Sir Winston riding the train one time in the 1920s, but as for asking regular folks for advice on how to handle the Third Reich, didn't happen. It's almost literally inconceivable. Besides, war-torn Londoners wouldn't have all answered the same way. The situation was complicated and informed by all manner of issues, from class differences to wanting to avoid the bloodshed, deprivation, and fear many had already experienced in World War I.
I mean, this whole film is sort of like a cartoon.
Nobody expects a Quentin Tarantino film to be historically correct, but there are details in Inglourious Basterds that are worth a second look. To start with, historian James Holland pegs a scene in which villain Hans Landa interrogates a French farmer as comically inaccurate.
I mean, how much leather can you fit in a squad of Germans?
But believe it or not, there's also a small kernel of truth in this film. For one, there was Operation Greenup, in which 2 Jewish emigres, Frederick Mayer and Hans Winberg, joined the Office of Strategic Services. In February 1945, they parachuted into Austria as part of an espionage operation, in which they, along with Franz Weber, a sympathetic Wehrmacht officer, provided valuable intel. Another group of Jewish refugees did similar work, according to an interview given to NPR by Kim Masters, whose father took part in the operation. Her father Peter and his family fled from Vienna to London, where Peter was arrested as an enemy alien, but managed to join the British military as an elite commando fighting the Nazis. Also, I feel like we don't need to mention this, but just in case, no, a bunch of Americans didn't mow down Hitler and a bunch of SS in a theater. If you watch Christopher Nolan's epic Dunkirk, it looks realistic enough, and the 2017 movie has been praised for getting things mostly right. Mostly. Nolan said he wanted to capture the feeling of what it was like to be trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk as the Nazis crept closer, with rescue looking more and more unlikely.
There are 400,000 men on this beach, sir.
The problem is that the scenes on the beach are far too orderly.
There is just not enough people here. It's too empty. It's too sparse. It was absolute chaos.
Consider that it wasn't just hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the area, but all of their stuff, too. Only they were more focused on evacuating people, meaning that their vehicles and other equipment had to be left behind, though disabled so that the Germans could get little use out of them. Actual photos of Dunkirk post-evacuation show trashed vehicles left everywhere, be that along a road or on the beach itself.
oh my God, look at the debris all over the place. I mean, he's really properly trashed.
By contrast, the tense, oftentimes confused scene of the same evacuation and atonement is more reflective of the real event. You know a movie's got to be pretty bad if Dwight D. Eisenhower comes out of retirement just to yell about it. Eisenhower was the general in charge of Allied troops when the real Battle of the Bulge was fought from December 1944 to January 1945. And according to him, 1965's Battle of the Bulge really was that awful. As World War II historian John McManus told Insider, there's one glaring oversight. Filmmakers used the wrong tanks that were made after the war. What's more, the tank formations in the film are oddly linear, not at all the way they were deployed in real life. And as for the film's famous tank ramming sequence, totally ridiculous. Tank units were focused on using artillery, not just smashing into stuff like it's a demolition derby.
Look, Lieutenant, it's tough enough just keeping alive in this mess without you belly aching.
Besides that, the real Ardennes forest was far more dense than what you see in the movie. It's also missing the ice and snow that made the battle even more hellish. And that's just the beginning. Besides the problems with tanks and terrain, the film consistently flubs facts about troop movements, uses post-war planes, shows post-war tech like C4 explosives, features strangely inaccurate uniforms, and shows embarrassingly sloppy military salutes. At least some of this could have been fixed by hiring a military advisor, which the film did. Only, hang on, that person was former Nazi tank commander Colonel Meinrad von Lückert. The basic premise of Windtalkers is grounded in reality. During World War II, U.S. forces used the languages of indigenous Americans to pass coded messages. The true history of World War II code talkers goes back to Choctaw-speaking service members during World War I. By World War II, the effort had grown to include Dene or Navajo, Cherokee, Comanche, and many more tribespeople. Most code talkers worked in pairs in the field, with one to operate the radio and the other to transmit, receive, and relay messages. They were in particular danger because Japanese forces targeted radio operators in an attempt to interrupt Allied communications. After the war, their work remained secret until it was declassified in the 1960s. And it wasn't until the early 2000s when long-retired code talkers began receiving congressional gold medals. So how does the film Windtalkers hold up to all that real history? Not particularly well. For one thing, there's the movie's claim that some code talkers had bodyguards, which is true, and that those guards had orders to kill code talkers if captured. That part is false as far as anyone can tell, though in the Marine Corps, bodyguards were assigned to protect vitally important code talkers and prevent their misidentification as Japanese fighters. In other words, the bodyguards were there to prevent fellow Americans from killing them because they thought they were Asians. Yikes. The true story of the Tuskegee Airmen, a group of black United States Army Air Forces pilots, is noble, but the way Red Tails portrays them isn't just historically inaccurate, but not even close to reality. According to some critics, the characters are too lighthearted, making the airmen seem like unserious jokesters rather than the professional service members they were.
Boy, I need a nap.
In fact, the Tuskegee Airmen, commanded by future Air Force General Benjamin O. Davis Jr., were a highly disciplined group with something to prove. As J. Byron Morris, a former Tuskegee Airman, told a Washington Post reporter, the black unit was set up to fail.
When they would get in our face, call us names, all kinds of things to wash us out. So they didn't believe in the program.
Morris explained, they wanted us to self-destruct, but B.O. Davis kept them on the straight and narrow, and the men were too self-respecting to fall apart.
8 German fighters or 80 German fighters, it still doesn't change what I think of you and your boys.
That means the real airmen didn't waste time, though their on-screen counterparts engaged in insubordination, public intoxication, and joking around at the controls of their planes. However, this perhaps isn't a consensus view, as historian Crystal R. Sanders told Penn State University that she felt the film was overall historically accurate. Red Tails also contains a number of technical inaccuracies. The biggest involves the long-standing myth that the unit never suffered serious casualties or lost a bomber during escort missions. Actually, 66 Tuskegee Airmen died while fighting, though that's one of the lowest casualty rates for units in the war, and records indicate that the group lost some 25 bombers. If you're watching a World War II movie made by American filmmakers, chances are the action focuses primarily on US or British allies, which leaves out much of what actually happened during the war. Enemy at the Gates tried to fix this. The film was about Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev's experiences during the Battle of Stalingrad. Whether or not you find the movie compelling is up to you, but don't expect it to be accurate. Early scenes in which Zaitsev experiences a bloody, chaotic Volga river crossing into the besieged city appear to be inspired by eyewitness accounts, and snipers were a key part of the Soviet military apparatus. Women and men routinely served alongside one another in combat, but that's where reality ends and cinematic license takes over. Future Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev didn't have as central a role in the battle as the movie leads you to believe, and there's an odd lack of military officers on screen. Zaitsev himself is given a strangely thin backstory despite being, the main character and a real person who was not only known for his accomplishments beyond Stalingrad, but lived until 1991. There are plenty of other details to quibble over too, such as issues with firearms, uniforms, and airplane accuracy. Bombers would never have flown so low, for instance. Then there's a nonsensical way tanks are parked near military headquarters, basically planting a big red "Bomb us, please" sign at a strategic location.